28,000 cases, 11,000 dead. The Ebola epidemic that hit West Africa 3 years ago shocked the entire planet. It began in Guinea in December 2013 and quickly spread to Liberia and Sierra Leone. Nigeria, Mali and Senegal also affected, although to a much lesser extent. For the first time since it first reared its head back in 1976, the virus even spread out of Africa, with registered cases in the US and Europe. The most affected countries declared a state of emergency, shut their borders and deployed the army in the streets to remove the bodies and isolate the sick. Then, in October 2014, 10 months after the epidemic first began, the UN warned of not only health but also economic and social consequences across the world.
It's a threat to economies and livelihoods and social structures, and most of all, lives. In Sierra Leone, in Guinea and Liberia, but in any country in the world, as recent events have shown. So the world has an interest in bringing this to a stop as quickly as possible. And as long as Ebola is in one country, it's a threat to all countries.
Well, the fight against Ebola was long and tough. Health workers paid a heavy price, making its control even more difficult. Even more extreme measures were brought in, such as the total confinement of entire populations for several days. The international community mobilised, sending medical teams and money. Eventually, the routes of infection were broken, and on the 29th of March 2016, the World Health Organization lifted the state of public health emergency. The WHO has now revealed that an effective vaccine is available, which could, it's hoped, prevent any new major epidemic, at least for the same strain of the virus. As for the survivors, they live in mourning for their loved ones and sometimes with the suspicions of their neighbours. Well, Katerina Vitosi and Mark Naftali revisit the sources of Ebola for France 24.
West Africa's Ebola outbreak began here. This is the forest region of southwest Guinea. Scientists believe fruit bats living in these branches may have carried the Ebola virus. Locals say this tree is where their nightmare started.
The children came to tell us there were bats living in this tree. We trapped them, skinned them, and ate them. But then people started getting sick. The children came back and burnt the tree and killed the bats that were left inside.
According to the World Health Organization, Etienne's 2-year-old son, Emile, was patient zero. The first of more than 28,000 Ebola cases in Guinea, Liberia and Sierra Leone.
One day he started to get a fever and felt shivery. I took him to the clinic and they told us it was malaria. So I bought medicine and we went home.
Emile never got better. He died on Christmas Day 2013. 19 others in the village of Meliandou soon followed. At the time, local healthcare worker Bernard Kamano had no idea what was killing his neighbours. But now, everyone's aware of the disease and its symptoms.
During the Ebola crisis, we were given these. We used the pictures to educate people about what was happening, to show them not to touch the sick. The images explained what to do if they saw someone who was ill.
It's been almost a year since Guinea's last Ebola case. The virus decimated what little healthcare infrastructure the country had. The government pledged to build it back, better than it was. But so far here, there's little sign of improvement.
Nothing works here. This is where we see the patients, where we treat them. Just look at the conditions. The medicines we sell are all out of date. We need help to build a new clinic, a new hospital. The government hasn't given us any funding. It's all paid for by the community.
And it's money this small farming community can ill afford. During the outbreak, Ebola quarantines restricted people's movements. Residents couldn't get a workforce together to harvest crops or travel to markets to sell. Kassa Ben Badan says her family went hungry, but there was one thing they would never eat again.
If someone came with bats, we wouldn't eat them. The village chief has made it illegal to hunt them now. You have to pay a fine. And we're scared of Ebola coming back.
There are signs in Meliandou that things are getting better. Money is still tight, but last year there was a good harvest. Etienne saved just enough to start rebuilding his life.
We need a fresh start. We are still living with my mother. I want my children in the future to be able to say, look, my father built that.
From Meliandou, a dusty road leads south to the nearest big town. Gekadou is buzzing with traders and the sound of prayers. Father Alexis Teleano delivered Mass throughout the epidemic. Although people avoided public areas where they could come into contact with Ebola victims, they still flocked to church, praying to a God that some feared had deserted them.
During the outbreak, the church was always full, but they were scared to shake hands during the service, so that didn't happen. But people were praying and praying for this sickness to end. They were desperate.
Eventually, their prayers were answered. And with the outbreak over, Sunday services are once again a place of quiet reflection and thanksgiving.
We praise God that this epidemic is now over. We can greet each other. In church, we shake hands, we eat together. We're not afraid to do that anymore. We're able to do all the things that are important to us as a community. We can look after our sick, bury the dead properly. We're no longer scared because we know Ebola is gone.
Just a few minutes away from the church, you get to Liberia. This river marks the border. It was shut during the epidemic to prevent Ebola's spread. Today it's open and busy. On the other side is the town of Foya. It's a regional trading hub with Guinea and Sierra Leone nearby. It became the epicenter of the outbreak. Hundreds died here before the virus spread.
Okay, here is Matu Bembo, my sister, Crave. Then this one is Siak Bembo. She was my mother. Was my mother graved. Then this is Tamba Bembo. It's my nephew.
Joseph Bembo lost 8 relatives to Ebola. In Liberia, funerals are an important tradition. They can last for days. But to prevent contamination, Ebola victims were buried quickly, most without their families around them. It was devastating.
When she died, we didn't see the body again. Was put in the plastic bag. That alone is axa of our culture. I said it at that time that it's no better for me to live.
But now, at least, there's somewhere to grieve. Last year, the site where victims were buried was cleaned up. Proper headstones were set, even for those that were too young to have a name.
Although it's painful, but this also helped me to remember. And in going on, I will also introduce the same place to my children. That is your grandmother.
For those left behind, life can be uncertain. Ebola killed Isatu Bililti's husband and her 7-year-old son.
I feel bad. I lay down, I can't sleep. The way my house was looking, I was getting in all with that. Say my husband that I only the family were doing. Pepper, I only that one because family will know valid.
And that's not enough to sustain her family. There's little chance of someone marrying a so-called Ebola widow, and in rural Liberia, single women can be sidelined. But on her bedside table, we spot Isatu's recovery plan. With help from an NGO, Isatu's become a beekeeper. No.
I get it here. Can't feel it. But I can feel fine. I can't scare.
Isatu's already had her first harvest. She can sell her African bee honey for $20 a gallon. It's enough to make the future seem a little bit brighter.
Beekeeping is less capital intensive. It does not require money to pay to feed the bees, especially with the kind of people we work with. Some of them are widows. They do not have cash to put in the beekeeping. So it's very easy to manage.
I'm happy. I will feel fine because when I sell the honey, I will get money. I buy food, we will be eating it. And I do small business. I have my children for the school.
From Foya, Ebola travelled south to Liberia's capital. In Monrovia's densely packed neighbourhoods, the disease spread quickly. At Ebola's peak, there were 100 cases here a day. Zeze Mulba caught it and survived. But today, he's back in hospital.
First blow.
A year after being given the Ebola all clear, doctors found traces of the virus in Zeze's semen. That means, although no longer infectious to touch, he could pass on the disease through having unprotected sex. He's now part of trials, looking for a drug that will clear his body finally of Ebola.
Okay, Sissy. Sissy, can you just pull off the outer shirt? So we can take a look. I have to do a physical exam, just a quick physical exam on him from head to toe, make sure he's okay.
Scientists are still learning about Ebola's physical legacy. This was the most deadly outbreak in history, killing more than 11,000 people in West Africa. But it also left 17,000 survivors from whom to learn.
From school, no pains. If you feel uncomfortable, just let me know, okay?
Previously, little was known about how Ebola could linger in a person's bodily fluid. Even less was known about how to help.
Before we started this study, we spoke with the survivors and they expressed frustration using condom all the days of their life. They want to have their kids, but they cannot have children because they have to use condom. Nobody understands what is really happening with them. Working on this trial have, given them some insight that life can be better.
Further down the corridor, millions of dollars are being ploughed into Ebola research. Before now, little had been spent on Ebola. But the scale of this outbreak spurred donors to invest in trials, including a vaccine. Scientists are confident of a major breakthrough.
If you have a vaccine, the vaccinated population is at risk, and you have a way to remove all traces of the virus, not only that they will not see an outbreak of this magnitude, but essentially we might be getting to the point where we're able to defeat Ebola.
But the priority for Zeze is just to be treated like everybody else.
Sometimes you go there for treatment. Those nurses are saying, this person is a survivor, they draw back from you. You see? You cannot get treatment. We may be able to travel one day. Yeah, so they be pointing finger, this is a survivor. But I will show you my document, I'll say, yes, I'm a survivor, but I'm very clear. Yes.
Zeze doesn't know whether he'll ever be clear of Ebola. But he's facing his future with courage and hope.
Katerina Vitozzi and Mark Naftalin revisiting the sources of Ebola for France 24. Well, that's all for this week's edition. Don't forget, of course, you can catch it and all the previous editions as well on our website at france24.com. More news coming up in just a moment's time. Stay with us if you can.